Tonight's story begins in the sodden jungles of Vietnam, 1968, where a lone Australian sergeant hears the one sound that freezes blood, the click of an enemy AK-47 safety. Knowing his own life depends on a weapon his allies call a plumber's nightmare. It's a tale of a forgotten teenage inventor and the ugly gun he built in his shed, who faced rejection from every military expert in the world. What unfolds will expose the brutal gap between theory and reality, reveal how humility can be the ultimate strategic advantage, and prove that in the face of overwhelming odds, pure, unadulterated function will always triumph. Before we begin this journey together, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this story with someone who knows that true value isn't always pretty, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Phuoc Thi Province, South Vietnam. October 21, 1968. Sergeant David Crozet knelt in the elephant grass, motionless. The humidity was a physical weight. His Owen Gun, a slab of parkerized steel and worn timber, lay in his hands, its top-feeding magazine jutting upward like a mechanical afterthought. At the Bien Hoa base camp, the Green Berets had scoffed. They'd called it the digger's blunder. One lieutenant, all polished brass and confidence, had hefted it, frowned at the crude sights, and shaken his head. "You trust your life to this thing?" Crozet had just shrugged. Let them have their match-grade M16S that choked on monsoonal damp. He preferred function over form. The handset hissed. A single coded phrase. Enemy element. 150 meters east. Strength unknown. Crozet's finger slid inside the trigger guard. Then he heard it, the rustle of foliage and the dull clink of a web buckle against metal in the impenetrable green. What unfolded in the next 2 minutes was a story written 1,000 times in the jungles of Southeast Asia. American rifles would seize. Allied weapons would fall silent. But this Australian artifact, conceived by a 24-year-old in a toolshed a world away and rejected by every major army that saw it, would cycle. In the water, in the grit, without fail. It always cycled. The Viet Cong patrol walked into a wall of sound. They heard the Owen's staccato thunder, and then the frantic, fruitless clearing of their own AK-47s as mud claimed the actions. Crozet couldn't have known, in that moment, that he was holding the most ruthlessly effective close-quarters weapon of the war. The Owen Gun's path to Vietnam was paved with rejection. When British Army Ordnance officers first inspected it in 1941, their verdict was scathing. Lieutenant Colonel William Paniker dismissed it as crude in manufacture, ungainly in appearance, and contrary to all accepted principles of small arms design. The British War Office recommended immediate rejection. American observers were even less diplomatic. A 1942 U.S. Ordnance report famously described the Owen as looking assembled in a garage from plumbing fixtures. Its most distinctive feature, the top-mounted magazine, was declared a tactical liability that would result in unnecessary casualties. Even in its homeland, the reception was hostile. The Australian military establishment had already committed to the British Sten gun, a cheap, mass-producible weapon backed by imperial authority. Why would they need a homemade contraption that looked like it was cobbled together by an amateur? Which, ironically, it was. Evelyn Owen was 24, with no formal engineering training, when he developed the prototype in his father's workshop in Port Kembla. The now iconic top-mounted magazine wasn't a stroke of tactical genius. It was a practical solution. Owen mounted it vertically to simplify the internal spring mechanism, making it easier to build with his limited tools. The experts saw only failure. Major F.A. Cardell Oliver wrote in a March 1941 internal memo, "It looks like something you'd find in a scrapyard, not on a battlefield. The Sten is proven. This contraption is not." The Australian military brass agreed, rejecting Owen's design. Case closed. But war has a way of humbling theory with reality. The turning point came not from generals, but from the sergeants and corporals who would have to carry the weapon into combat. In late 1941, a group of junior officers and NCOs, after testing both the Sten and the Owen in jungle conditions, sent a collective letter to their commander. The message was brutally simple. Give us the ugly gun. The Sten jams. The Owen doesn't. Official resistance remained fierce. Lieutenant Colonel Edward Digges, chief of Australian Small Arms Procurement, argued that adopting the Owen would be an embarrassment to our relationship with British ordnance authorities. The weapon's very simplicity, which soldiers would come to love, was seen by experts as proof of its inferiority. They were about to be proven catastrophically wrong. A comparative trial was arranged in May 1941, the Owen versus the Sten and the Thompson. On paper, it was a mismatch that should have ended the Owen's career. Military observers scoffed at its agricultural appearance and odd balance. But when the firing started, something remarkable happened. The Sten jammed repeatedly. The Thompson, though reliable, was heavy and sensitive to dirt. The Owen, crude and wrong-looking, fired 500 rounds without a single stoppage. Then, the engineers tried to break it. They buried it in sand, it fired. They dunked it in water, it fired. They dropped it in mud, picked it up, and it fired immediately without cleaning. It simply worked. The official report could only muster a tepid, further testing required. But behind the scenes, engineers scrambled to understand its accidental genius. That top-mounted magazine, so derided by experts, meant gravity helped feed rounds, even at awkward angles. The separate ejection port meant mud and water that entered one part of the weapon couldn't contaminate the magazine. Its heavy barrel and simple blowback action made it nearly impossible to jam. Every flaw was, in the jungle, a feature. Captain Harry Hawker, a trial observer, wrote in his personal journal, "Watch the ordnance boys today trying to make the Owen fail. Can't do it. They're furious. This ugly bastard just keeps firing." Production was authorized in July 1941, but grudgingly. An initial order for just 2,000 units was placed, a token gesture of official skepticism. The first Owen guns reached frontline troops in early 1942, just as Australian forces deployed to the brutal jungles of Papua New Guinea. The initial reaction from soldiers was suspicion. "We wanted Thompsons. Those looked like proper guns," recalled Sergeant Bill Henderson of the 214th Battalion. "The Owen looked like someone welded together farm equipment. We thought we were being given rejects." Within 3 months, those same soldiers were writing home, demanding more Owens. Word spread through the ranks. In the jungle, nothing works like the Owen. Requests for Thompsons and Stens dried up. A black market emerged as soldiers acquired Owens from other units. By mid-1942, frontline Australian infantry were universally armed with the weapon their own experts had tried to kill. The Owen gun's legend was forged in the swamps of the Buna-Gona campaign. On December 3, 1942, Private Jack Morris waded through chest-deep swamp water, his Owen held high above the murky surface. American troops nearby struggled to keep their M1 Garans dry, their actions wrapped in cloth. When the morning erupted with enemy fire, Morris dropped, submerged his Owen in the filthy water, and rose to fire. A Japanese Type 100 submachine gun chattered from a bunker 50 meters ahead. He fired a burst and dropped back down. His weapon had been completely submerged. It should have been useless. He rose again. The Owen fired instantly. Another burst. The Japanese gun went silent. To his left, an American paratrooper cursed, his Thompson jammed by water intrusion, his hands shaking as he tried to clear it, completely exposed. Morris lay down covering fire, his Owen spitting rounds steadily despite being caked in mud. This single engagement repeated itself across the campaign. Official after-action reports documented a staggering disparity. Owen guns maintained a 97% operational readiness rate. The Sten fell to 31%. The vaunted Thompson managed only 64%. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Honer wrote in his combat diary, "The Owen gun has saved countless lives. Men are fighting over them. I've had to forbid trading with other units because my men keep stealing Owens from American and British troops." The statistics piled up relentlessly. Through 1943 and 1944, Australian units armed with Owen guns recorded average kill ratios of 8-1 in close quarters jungle combat, compared to 3-1 for Sten-armed units and 4-1 for Thompson units. The difference wasn't training or tactics, it was the weapon. The Japanese High Command took notice. A captured intelligence report from the Japanese 18th Army noted with concern the Australian submachine gun, vertical magazine type, for it demonstrates concerning reliability and recommended increased caution when facing Australian units. What the experts had called impossible was now a tactical fact. The Owen's design, born in a garage, was perfect for jungle warfare. By 1944, demand was so high that a thriving black market emerged. Lieutenant Roger Davies of the British 7th Indian Division wrote home, "Acquired an Owen from an Australian sergeant for 2 bottles of whiskey and a carton of American cigarettes. My CO would court-martial me if he knew, but this gun works when nothing else does." This legendary reliability seamlessly transitioned to a new jungle war a generation later. When Australian troops deployed to Vietnam in 1965, many in the elite Australian Army Training Team, ATTV, chose the 25-year-old Owen over the modern M16. They were vindicated during the monsoons of 1966. As American M16s jammed catastrophically in the humidity, their direct gas impingement systems clogging with carbon and debris, the Owen guns kept firing. Warrant Officer Ray Simpson recorded in his patrol diary, 3-day patrol, continuous rain. American platoon nearby experiencing 40% weapon failure rate with M16s. Our Owen guns, 0 failures. The Yanks are borrowing our weapons for night guard duty. The weapon's finest hour came at the Battle of Long Tan on August 18, 1966. In a torrential monsoon, Delta Company, 6th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, used their Owen guns and rifles to hold off a force of 2,500 Viet Cong and North Vietnamese troops. Corporal Barry Miller, an Owen gunner, later testified, "I fired over 500 rounds through my Owen in that fight. Rain coming down in sheets, mud everywhere, weapon completely covered in filth, never jammed once. I saw blokes with M16s next to me who couldn't get their weapons to fire after 2 magazines. The Owen just kept working." One captured North Vietnamese soldier admitted to interrogators, "We thought the rain would make your weapons fail. That's why we attacked. But your guns kept firing. We couldn't understand it." By 1968, the Owen gun had been in continuous jungle combat service for 26 years. Most weapon systems are obsolete in half that time. As Lieutenant Colonel David Thompson summarized in 1969, modern weapons offer improvements in weight, accuracy, and rate of fire. But in the jungle, reliability trumps all other factors. The Owen gun, designed in 1939 by a man with no formal training, remains the single most reliable infantry weapon in theater. This is not nostalgia. This is observable fact. The Owen gun was formally retired in 1971, succeeded by the F1 submachine gun, a design that was, in essence, a modernized Owen. Even in its replacement, the original's brutalist logic was vindicated. Across 3 decades of unbroken jungle combat, from the swamps of New Guinea to the rubber plantations of Vietnam, the Owen maintained a reliability record unmatched by any Allied submachine gun of its century. It had outlived the Thompson, rendered the Sten obsolete, and was still in the fight when the M16 promised a new dawn. Evelyn Owen, the garage tinkerer who willed it into existence, saw little of this legacy. He died in 1949 at just 49 years old, never knowing how his weapon would dominate a second war. The Australian Army would later posthumously enshrine him as one of the Commonwealth's most significant military inventors. His weapon's DNA now underpins modern warfare. Every submachine gun built for jungle or maritime operations carries its imprint. Simplified actions, sealed mechanisms, and gravity-assisted feeds. The design that broke every rule ultimately became the blueprint. The ultimate tribute arrived decades later. During the 1990s development of the Australian F-88 rifle, engineers performed reliability trials against historical arms. An Owen gun, pulled from museum storage after 23 years of silence, was test-fired. It functioned flawlessly. The modern assault rifle, with its advanced metallurgy and precision engineering, could only match, not surpass, the Owen's legendary reliability. The experts had been wrong. The crude, ugly weapon that defied every accepted principle had performed exactly as its amateur creator intended. In the mud and the rain, where theory dissolves and function is everything, the Owen Gun proved a timeless truth. Genius often wears the face of a plumber's nightmare. Those American advisors who once scoffed at it in 1966 were, by 1967, desperately trying to barter for it. The jungle had taught them the lesson the experts never grasped. In a firefight, aesthetics are irrelevant. Performance is paramount. And the Owen Gun always performed.